One of the things that I often describe with regards to why I enjoy my job is that if I do everything right, families stay together, they get to keep their money, they get to grow their businesses, and future generations are prepared to repeat that cycle. And I really like helping give clients the tools to accomplish each of those steps.
Welcome to the Verdict Signal podcast, where we feature how top attorneys help people make informed choices, avoid common mistakes, and move forward with confidence. Now, enjoy the show, and here's your host.
Daniel Gao here. I'm the host of Verdict Signal, and today we're expanding our conversations to the experts who protect what people build, their careers, families, and businesses. I have Harmony Durfee, a third-generation attorney who focuses on dynasty estate planning, helping families and business owners protect wealth while preserving relationships across generations. With advanced training in conflict resolution and international arbitration, she brings a unique ability to navigate complex family and business dynamics with precision and care. Outside the firm, she is also an accomplished musician, reflecting the same discipline and creativity she brings to her legal practice. So Harmony, welcome and glad to have you here.
Good to be here.
Yeah, so let's start at the very top. How did you first get interested in the legal field?
Well, as was said in my bio there, I am a third generation attorney, though it is not three successive generations. So my maternal grandfather was an attorney and did asset protection, and then my father is an attorney. And so I was raised in an attorney household. There was lots of legal discussions at the dinner table and things of that nature all growing up. And I actually had no interest in the law until I was at college and realized over the course of a day that I had like way more legal knowledge and understanding than my peers just because of what I gathered at the dinner table. And so, I knew answers to questions and was being surprised that like I'm the only one here who knew the answer to what an LLC is and what a trust is and some of the basics on estate planning entities. And as I thought through it more and explored it more, I realized how much I enjoy that work. And, I've always wanted to help people be successful and families to be successful. And was trying to like figure out how to do that. And I realized that I have a knack for what my dad does with regards to dynasty estate planning. So that's how I lucked into this position.
Got it. Okay, and that's what I'm assuming led you to focus on the estate laws because you got it from the family.
Yep.
Got it. Okay. Now, Harmony, what's one thing you wish more people understood about working with an attorney?
Ooh, one of the biggest ones would be the fact that it's not our job to judge you. I need to know information about things in your life that may be uncomfortable to talk about because it has legal consequences. Various things like we've had clients who don't really want to tell us whether they're US citizens or green card holders, or whether they're married or just living with someone. Things of that nature where there's a legal consequence to whether there's an actual marriage or you're just treating each other as though you are married, but you're not legally married. Those are two different things. I don't care how you live your life, but I need to know how you live your life. And that's I've had many clients where we discover along the way, oh, you're calling this person your wife, but there's no marriage certificate. You are not married. That changes how we do things. We can still treat her as though she's your wife, but legally she's not. And so that changes the documents.
Okay.
That's one of the biggest is just I'm not here to judge you. I need to know what the situation is so that I can plan your documents accordingly.
Okay. So it sounds like a lot of people or there's a decent amount of people kind of look at attorneys as kind of no matter what area of law they're in, they're almost like they uphold the law, even if like that's why I don't want to say something that may get me in trouble. But in reality, you're more like their advocate. So
Yeah.
whatever they tell you is that you basically take that information and help them as much as possible. You're not there to get them in trouble or anything.
Yeah. I will certainly advise them not to break the law if they admit that they are breaking a law, but unless they are using my services to break the law, or they have actively admitted a plan to break the law, I am not only not going to report that to anyone, I am ethically obligated not to report it. You know, the attorney-client privilege is pretty strong. So unless you tell me you're about to commit a crime, I can't and won't share anything.
Okay.
So, tell me that, you're not legally a citizen yet, but you're working on getting a green card holder, some of those things, because I'm not going to tell ICE. I don't have any dog in that fight. I need to make sure your documents reflect your current status, whatever that is.
Okay. Now, Harmony, what would you say are some of those common situations that clients come to you for?
There's probably two big categories of common situations. The first biggest category is they've gone through something messy in their own family. You know, a parent's died and they've experienced probate court and how that operates and how frustrating and messy that is. There's a lawsuit between siblings. There's a conflict between family members. That's one big chunk of like something's gone wrong and they want to know how to solve it or how to fix it. The other big chunk is, generally speaking, someone who's more successful than they're fully comfortable with. You know, they started a business and they were planning on success, but maybe not quite this fast. And they're going, oh, wait, are we legally compliant? Have we made sure that this isn't going to cause an estate tax problem as we grow and some of those things? So I kind of get both as the biggest chunks. Something's already gone wrong, or there's more success than was expected, so they want to plan for it.
Got it. And what would you say some of the most common misconceptions you hear from your clients when it comes to estate planning, dynasty planning, like the things that when you bring up to them, they're like, oh, I didn't realize that was a thing, or I had no idea that I can do that. Like, what are some of those common misconceptions?
One of the misconceptions would be that a will is how you can and should distribute your estate. So your estate is what you own, your bank accounts, your investments, your property, all of that. And the will is a mechanism for distributing the estate, but it is almost never the best mechanism. It is usually, if not the worst, one of the worst mechanisms, because a will, by its very nature, requires going through the probate court and the not only time consuming but also cost consuming court process, because a will is just an instruction sheet to the judge. It says, here's what I want you to do with my estate. Please do it. And depending on the situation, the judge may or may not follow your wishes exactly. And it's a public court record. So probate is not something to aim for, and therefore a will is almost never the right move with regards to distributions. Now, a will is a critical piece of the puzzle, but it's not the end all be all, and it's usually not the best alternative.
Okay. Now, when it comes to mistakes people make, like what are some of the biggest mistakes people make before they call a lawyer?
One of the biggest ones I've been seeing quite a bit of is I want my residence to go to my kids and I want it to be nice and easy. So I'm just going to quit claim them the property now. Quit claim deeds are one of the biggest mistakes that people make, because what they don't realize about quit claim deeds is, by their very nature, they get rid of any insurance warranties on the property. So if you have homeowner's insurance for your residence and you quit claim that deed, the homeowner's insurance has lapsed. It is no longer in effect. It no longer protects you whatsoever. So even the good intentions, hey, I want this property to go to my kids, I'm just going to give it to them now, will have the negative consequence of your insurance has lapsed. First. And secondly, when it comes to certain assets, real estate being one of the most obvious, inheriting the asset is better than owning it first. Because appreciating assets like real estate, like stocks, investment accounts, things of that nature, the appreciation has a step up in cost basis when inherited. So if you buy a house for say 200,000 and it's now worth 500,000, if you sold it, you would have a capital gains tax on the $300,000 difference. If instead it gets inherited, if my dad buys a house at 200, it's worth 500 when he dies, so I inherit it at 500. If I sell it, my cost basis is 500 rather than the 200 he bought it at. Whereas if he quit claim deeds the house to me while he's alive, I inherit his cost basis. It's 200 for me as well. Because he gave it to me while he was living. So when someone dies, the appreciating assets that they own get a step up in cost basis for their beneficiaries. And that's something that many people miss because they just don't fully think through all of the consequences of you have the right instinct, you have the good intentions of I want to make it easy for my kids to have this property. Not the way to go about it, because you're shooting them in the foot later for future tax consequences that almost certainly was not your intention.
Okay, really good to know then. Now, with the rise of AI, I'm sure that you got a lot of people coming in and saying that, oh, I looked this up on ChatGPT and I did this, I did that, or maybe that's the right reason why they don't want to go to an attorney. But what would you see as kind of the potential downsides of just relying on AI to make their will or to make their do all their paperwork for them?
I've seen quite a few clients who have something generated by AIs, and one of the biggest flaws that I've seen is the AIs will know enough that they'll say, we need a section for this. Like I just reviewed a contract where it was generated by AI, and that was very obvious. One of the reasons it was obvious is because they had a remedy section that basically says, the parties have the ability to remedy. And that was it. It didn't actually spell out what the terms of a remedy are for the contract, which is what a remedy section is supposed to do in a contract. So AIs will know, oh, contracts have a remedy section, we're going to put a remedy section. But it won't actually know what information from a legally structural standpoint should go into those sections. So often I'll find with the AI drafted documents that clients will bring in, I'll find that, okay, you technically have all four corners of the house, but no substance. You put the cornerstones, you poured the cement, but the cement didn't actually have anything that would stick. And that's, in reviewing the AI contracts and documents and things, that's one of the biggest ones, is it will think that it gave you something that it didn't actually give you. And then the other caution with regards to AI that I've seen a lot of is AIs are by their very nature a consensus and an amalgamation of everyone's knowledge on a subject. The problem is, when it comes to legal matters, a lot of people have opinions about legal matters that are just wrong. Some of the things like the quit claim deed situation. I had a client who quit claimed her property to her son because she was researching with AI, how do I make it easy for my son to inherit my property? And that was the solution it came up with. It's like, okay, yes, that's a solution, but here's the fundamental problems in that solution that the AI didn't know about or didn't see. Because the secondary and tertiary consequences for the legal actions aren't obvious. And because an AI isn't just gathering legal information from legal sources, it's getting it from the general sources. It's going to have general opinions that are just factually inaccurate or legally unfounded, and therefore not what you want to have in your documents.
Okay, really good to know then. So if you're using AI, be very careful, talk to a lawyer instead.
Well, and there's a place where AI can enhance things for sure. It's a great research tool, but at the end of the day, you want someone who has experience to filter what answers the AI gives based on real world experience.
Okay, so you can use both, but use both, I guess, is a good advice to give.
If someone's really cost efficient, using AI is generally more expensive because it takes longer for me to improve an AI generated document than it takes for me to just create one of my own.
Oh, interesting.
Because I know what goes in the document and I have very good templates.
Okay. Good to know then. Now, Harmony, you in your intro, I talked about advanced training in conflict resolution. Also, I mean, you offer alternative dispute resolution. Can you talk a little about that? Like, what does that mean?
So one of the things that I have just in life experience and then added in the legal experience is trying to be a peacemaker in tense situations. So I am the youngest of 8 kids. I have over 100 first cousins. And so the family dynamics across multiple generations and across varying personalities and all of that is something that I just saw a lot of as a kid. Growing up with so many families and so many family members in drastically different situations, you just see a lot of things. And then in law school, because I knew that my aim was to, become my father's successor and help families in a dynastic format the way he has done, one of the things that I realized I could study a lot on was conflict resolution specifically and alternative dispute resolution. The certificates behind me, and in the middle is just my law degree, but the two on the side are that conflict resolution and international arbitration certificates because that's what I focused my legal studies on. And I had some really great experiences with that because, I went to a study abroad program in Israel and worked with an Israeli hostage negotiator and learned a lot from him on how that approach happens. And, the program in Israel was specifically how conflict resolution and different religious traditions coincide, which is very topical for the geographic location that I was in. Israel is quite a place to learn about that and to be studying that and conversing with people who are actively trying to promote conflict resolution amongst the differing religions. And then I also studied in London for international arbitration because international arbitration has become a significant and growing movement. Because there are conflicts that will arise in most circumstances as they go. If something's only going to exist for 6 months, maybe you'll avoid conflicts. But if it's going to exist for 2 years, 10 years, 50 years, 1,000, conflicts are going to happen. And not just because of time, but also because of locations, personality differences, the number of people. All of these many things add sources of potential conflict. And so as international arbitration has grown, it was really cool to learn more about how that system has evolved, because it used to be that arbitration was kind of seen as, yes, you could do arbitration, but really, if you want something to go well, you want to do litigation, because then you have the court system behind you and you have all of this.
Mhm.
And in most circumstances, that's just not the case anymore. Litigation is not as commonly necessary because many things can be handled privately. We don't want the public court system in this deal. We're going to figure out a private arbitration manner of resolving the conflict without it being a matter of public record, and depending on how you do it, without it costing as much or taking as much time. That it's fascinating to have actively learned and studied on some of those things, because conflicts arise everywhere, and I'd like to, help people resolve them. I aim to be a peacemaker, and my name is Harmony, in part because that's what I aim to bring to others and to my clients. I want them to be at peace and to have harmony in their lives and with their family members and business partners.
We have the perfect name for it. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't pick it, but it's a good one.
It fits well. Okay, now Harmony, let's say that somebody is looking for help with this, with their estate planning, their dynasty planning, and they're looking for a lawyer who can help them, but they've never worked with a lawyer before. They don't know who to choose. What advice would you give to this person so that they can find that right lawyer who has the ability, has the experience, and can really get them the results they're looking for?
So that's kind of a more complicated question to answer than it may seem, because it depends on what the client's aims are, and it depends on what they have. If their problems are of a nature that can be resolved at a smaller level, and they have a smaller estate, they don't want to spend a significant portion of the estate on setting it up. Hey, you don't need someone who's going to do as complex planning as someone like myself. We have clients across the economic spectrum, but most of our clients are more complicated because that's the niche that we excel at. And so it depends on what the client wants out of their attorney. If they're looking for relatively simple stuff, they want to avoid probate, they want to designate who's going to make decisions for them while they are alive and after they are gone, and they want to decide who gets their stuff. That's kind of the bare bones. And then the question becomes, are you planning for your death, or are you planning multi-generationally? Because most people, and most attorneys in general, most estate planning attorneys only really plan for the first death. What are we going to do when you die? What happens to your stuff? And for many people, that's the right planning, because they only care that far. They only want to have influence that far. One of the structurally different things that our firm does with regards to our approach is we have multi-generational planning. We have a plan for our firm to be here for the next 1,000 years. I'm one of the young associate attorneys, but we have attorneys who are in their late 80s, all the way down to freshly out of law school and barely graduating the bar. We are actively planning the next generation of attorneys so that we will be around to help our clients who are multi-generational. We have clients who we are currently doing work for generation 4. And our law firm and our attorneys started with generation 1 when they were planning.
Wow.
And now we're on generation 4. And generation 5 is being born, and we'll be doing their planning too. So some of what the question is, how far forward does the client want to look? Because they can go as far or as little as they want to. I also have clients who, I just want to give the money to my kids and I don't care what they do with it. That's it. And that's okay. I can write documents that have that effect, but that's not my instinct. There are other estate planning attorneys where that's their instinct. My instinct is I want to have a lasting multi-generational effect. And, sometimes that's within the family, sometimes that's charitable contributions, depending on if the client even has kids or they have kids but not grandkids. And so, okay, have you thought about what other things you want to do with your estate, even if you're no longer here? What positive effect do you want to have on the world in the years to come? So some of those things help affect what are you looking for? Do you want something simple? And also, do you have a business? Because most people who have a business should be planning with regards to asset protection and tax planning that they aren't doing. They have the business, but they're not doing all of the things that they can and should do to help grow the business beyond what they've already done. So I hope that kind of answers the question.
Yeah,
I know
it
it
does.
may not be as direct of an
Yep.
answer as you
No, that's
wanted,
fine.
but it's more complicated an answer than people think.
Yeah, no, completely understand. And now, Harmony, you guys have a new book. I love the title, Trust Issues. Tell me, what is this book about?
So it's called Trust Issues. It's by my father, Rick Durfee. And he's actually just written a second edition of the book that's going to be coming out soon. And it's about why traditional estate planning has been failing. There's a lot of things that the traditional estate planning attorney will do and has done for the last many decades that has not been as successful as people have thought it would be. And so it's an examination of, hey, what are we doing wrong? What can we do better? And some of those things include some of the multi-generational planning. Very few estate planning attorneys think beyond one generation. It's starting to become more popular, but I think I can probably count on one hand the number of other estate planning attorneys who I know are thinking past one generation. There's probably more that I'm just not aware of, but very few. We're in the minority, and it's a growing minority, but it's still a minority because there's a lot of things that people do in their trusts that defeat the purpose that the grantor wanted to do. The grantor is the person who creates a trust. And one of the things that often happens is the grantor will say, here's something I want to have happen. I want to help my kids avoid taxes with regards to what they're inheriting. And then the trust will do that. And then we'll also have language that destroys that avoidance of the tax. And so it has the good language and then adds bad language that defeats the purpose of the good language. That happens in a lot of trusts. And so Rick's book is kind of clarifying, hey, here's some things that people are missing and people should be thinking about. And it's actually written more to clients than it is to other attorneys, because clients need to be thinking about who they want doing their plan. If they want it to be multi-generational, they may or may not have an attorney who's qualified to do that, because not many estate planning attorneys do. One of the easiest questions with regards to that, if a client has a trust and it's a revocable trust and the word revocable is in the name, the attorney who helped them make that trust was not thinking beyond one generation. Guaranteed. That the fact that it has revocable in the name means they weren't thinking past a generation, because revocable is a term of art that is guaranteed to not always be true. So a trust is set up by a grantor. That's the person who sets up a trust. And with a revocable trust, the grantor has the ability to change the trust. They have the ability to revoke it. Here's the thing about people. They die. So if the grantor is the person who can revoke the trust, the grantor is a person, eventually they will die. So eventually the trust will not be revocable because the person who had the authority to revoke it is dead. And we don't, in the law, there are no mediums, there are no ghosts. You cannot revoke a trust when you're gone. You're gone. So any attorney who puts the word revocable in the name of a revocable trust isn't thinking beyond the life of the grantor. They just aren't.
Mm-hmm.
And so as clients have been reading Rick's book and realizing, hey, here's these things in my trust that I didn't realize were there. You know what? I want an attorney who will realize that. I want an attorney who's thinking multi-generationally. I want advisors who are thinking multi-generationally. I want to, help my kids be prepared for inheriting. Some of those things that just most attorneys aren't thinking about and most clients aren't thinking about. So one of the things I find in meeting with clients is when I describe, the process of this multi-generational having the wealth snowball at each generation and grow and help improve the lives of successive generations rather than destroy their lives through destructive behaviors, clients almost always want that. They go, oh, that's wonderful. That either that's what I thought I had, but it's not when you actually read me portions of my own trust, or I didn't realize that was an option. That sounds great. Let's do that. Let's make that happen. That's his book covers a lot of those things that are just not thought of in the traditional estate planning sphere by attorneys, advisors, or clients.
Okay, so pick up that book, Trust Issues. Okay.
It's a good one.
Yeah. Okay.
Second edition coming out soon.
Okay.
As of when we're recording this.
Sounds good. Now, Harmony, I do have one last question for you, but before I ask it, I do want to point people to your website at durfeelawgroup.com. Now, last question is, what does peace of mind mean to you?
Ooh, that's a good question. One of the things that I often describe with regards to why I enjoy my job is that if I do everything right, families stay together, they get to keep their money, they get to grow their businesses, and future generations are prepared to repeat that cycle. And I really like helping give clients the tools to accomplish each of those steps. One of the things that I do with many clients that brings peace of mind to them is that, they've been agonizing over, yeah, I know I need to avoid probate. I just haven't actually talked to an attorney and done the documents to do that. And it's always a relief when they come in and sign. Signing ceremonies at our firm are in many forms a celebration because the clients are relieved. They're leaving 10 pounds lighter and they just feel at ease because they have a plan. One of the things that gets many people anxious and stressed out and feeling inadequately prepared for things is that they don't have stuff written down. There's a lot to be said for if you want something to happen, write out a plan for it. And that's true of legal documents too. Even if you don't know what you need with regards to your estate, that's why you have an attorney. Come to me and say, hey, here's the mess that is my estate. What should I have that I don't? And I'll help sort you through that. And it brings tons of peace to clients because, it's one of those things that keeps people up at night. And, I really enjoy the ability to get a client to a signing ceremony where they feel like they've accomplished the hard thing. They've written it down, they have a plan. And even if they change it down the line, oh, okay, we did this, but we're going to change to XYZ for these reasons. Changing it is easy. Updating it is easy.
Mhm.
Creating it is what can be difficult.
Mhm.
I often conceptually think that the distance between 0 and 1 feels significantly greater than the difference between 1 and 2,
Mhm.
because if you have something to build on, it's easier to build on it.
Mhm.
And if you have nothing, sometimes it feels difficult to build. And so the peace of mind that can come from, hey, you have something that we can build on. You have the cornerstone, you have the foundation. Let's improve it, sure. But hey, you have a foundation. You have the first step. And the peace of mind that can come from helping people lose less sleep is really awesome.
Mhm.
And one of the you talked about our website. We have lots of articles and blog posts on our website with lots of information. I don't believe this is on our website, but one of the articles that we hand out at conventions that we attend is an article that's titled "The Estate Planner's Guide to Better Sex." And it's all based on the principle of, if there are these things in the back of your mind, how to avoid probate, am I ruining my kids, any of these things that would be resolved by having an estate plan defined, it's causing it's causing issues in other areas of your life, because you know, you can't get out of your head on some of these things you worry about. If I have money, how do I get it to my kids without it ruining them? Or if I have money, but I don't want it to go directly to my kids because I know they'll use it in a negative way, have you protected it in a way that will help them without feeding their bad habits? And having a plan resolves a lot of those issues. And
Mhm.
then clients can think about the fun things that they want to do with the rest of their time. They're not taking up mental energy and space dealing with these problems that they haven't solved. We've solved them. We've taken that burden from you. Go do the fun project you've been putting off because you don't have time because you haven't figured out your estate plan. The peace of mind that comes from having a plan is really awesome and really wonderful. And I know that in my own life, I kind of realized that there are many things about what I'm doing that I have defined, and those are the areas of my life where I have peace. And it's the areas that is like, okay, this isn't quite defined. I need to define that better. I need to write out a plan for this area of my life better. Because those are the ones that cause stress. The
Mhm.
ones I've thought through and I've written down and I've planned out, those don't cause stress because I have a plan for when things go wrong. I have a aim and a net to catch me if I fall. Some of those things.
Mhm.
Whereas, it's hard to have peace of mind if you don't know that there's a net underneath you to catch you if you fall.
Very well said. Well, there you have it. Harmony sharing her expertise. So, Harmony, where can people contact you in your practice?
Well, like you already said, we've got a website, durfeelawgroup.com. You can also feel free to call into our office. Our main line is 480-324-8000. You can also email us at info@durfeelawgroup.com if you want to just email a question. We'll connect you with the right attorney. We've got a team of multiple attorneys that have different niche areas of practice. We all do estate planning broadly, but we have people who focus on different areas of estate planning. And so one of the biggest things is connecting you with the right attorney, because it might be me. It also might be one of our other attorneys,
Mhm.
depending on what your specific circumstances are. So go to our website, go to our YouTube channel. We have lots of informative videos there. And I look forward to seeing anyone who calls us.
Awesome. Well, this is great, Harmony. Thank you for coming on, and thank you for sharing your knowledge and expertise.
Pleasure speaking with you. Good to be here.
Thanks for listening to the Verdict Signal podcast. Any questions, please contact the practice directly with the contact information provided during the show. We'll see you again next time. Bye for now.